Very good evening. It's about 3 minutes after 7. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Bedminster Township Committee. Our entire committee is with us tonight for our October 2nd, 2017 regular meeting. Can I have the Open Public Meetings Act statement?
Yes, sir. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was sent to the Courier News in Somerville and to the Burnsville News in Whippany, to all subscribers, and also posted here at the Municipal Building as of January 9th, 2017.
I'd like you all to join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Meeting minutes. We have one set of meeting minutes to review, and that is from the September 18th regular meeting. Any comments, questions, revisions? If not, I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Purse and raffles. We have an on-premise merchandise for Homeless Solutions, October 16th, 2017, 1 p.m. at the Hamilton Farms Golf Club. And social affair permit for Homeless Solutions, October 16th, 2017, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Hamilton Farms Golf Club. So a social affair permit and an on-premise merchandise. Any comments or questions? I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second. Again, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Comments. Every Township Committee meeting, we have two opportunities for any member of the public come up and make a comment. Please bring yourself right up to that podium and microphone, state your name and your address and your comment. Seeing none, we'll move on to our monthly reports from our subcommittee chairs. And we'll start with Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. I attended both the REC committee meeting and the Jacobus Vanderveer meeting between last session and today. With respect to REC, we were going over some of the programs coming up for the winter. Looking back a little bit, the numbers for Camp Bedminster are back to almost high all time. So it's a good result. Went very well this year. Everybody was very pleased with it. So I'd like to see that continue. They're currently involved with the master plan review, and they're taking a look at some of the facilities usages and seeing what might need to be tweaked a bit. But Paul and Robin will be, swinging the wagons on that issue. And then, of course, we've got our winter season coming up, so we're looking to get registrations out there and get folks involved and involved with REC. But very good meeting. We talked a little bit about the dog park, and sort of remains to be seen what we do with that, but more to come in the future in terms of whether we can bring some folks in that are particularly interested in getting involved with the dog park and maybe put that under REC's umbrella. Jacobus Vanderveer House, very interesting meeting. Has a third party service come in. They had done some investigative work of paranormal activity. Showed us some of the clips. Was pretty interesting, to say the least.
No, it wasn't moths.
No, this was definitely not
real
moths.
Paranoia.
It was more like Close Encounters.
All right.
But the evidence was pretty gripping, I got to tell you. So it was really quite interesting. They're very involved with Colonial Christmas right now.
He didn't say it was Henry Engelbrecht, was he?
No.
Never mind. I'm sorry.
No, that went over my head.
Never mind.
But no, very neat issue. There's going to be an event plan, but it's already sold out. So some good opportunities, some good programs coming through there in the future. The Colonial Christmas, they're getting worked up for that. Obviously, that's the big event of the year. And from the fundraising perspective, got some positive news from the county. They love the project. I'm talking about the barn now. Very much in favor of the project. Unfortunately, there have been some other projects that have some more pressing needs for the immediate cycle, but we're in the hopper and it's being viewed at very favorably from Somerville, so that's a very good thing. We just have to wait our time a little bit.
Great.
So overall, two great meetings and a lot of good things going on. I have to say, the JVH board, and Robin is here in the public sitting here, but they work very, very hard. I mean, you talk about a hands-on group that gets stuff done, a very impressive group of folks over there, and a lot of really good stuff going on.
Well, I know Craig Sutherland's doing a good job, and they've had a long history of good leadership there, so,
Yes.
yeah, terrific.
Great stuff.
Mr. Hickey?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. I can't top the paranormal activity, so I won't try. Just one quick update. The Master Plan Reexamination Committee did have a meeting last week with the Open Space Committee. Obviously, they are a priority in terms of getting their input back into the Master Plan update. So they are currently working on that, and we should expect to receive some input over the course of the next several weeks. We also need to schedule a meeting with Judy and her team to get some additional input from the municipality. We'll work to do that within the next several weeks as well.
Very
That's
good.
all I have.
Mr. Jacobs?
Mayor, I had no subcommittee meetings since our last meeting, but what we did have, and I think most of us were in attendance, it was not paranormal. It was perhaps not normal, but it was moth night. And I think with great success, Bedminster first moth night went off. We had about, I would say, between 40 to 50 in attendance of all ages, young kids, some folks who are older than young kids, and the presentation was really interesting and captured a lot of folks' attention for a good hour plus on a Friday night, and it was dark, and people were out there counting the different moths that were showing up. Judy's nodding her head, and a big thanks goes out to Tim Walter and the rest of the Environmental Commission, and also thank you to the folks from DPW who set some of the material up. So thank you, John. Thanks a lot for that, and that's all I had, Mayor.
Two of my boys were there. They loved it. They said it was great.
They didn't eat any moths.
No.
Not intentional.
Ms. Santucci?
Poisonous or not poisonous?
They're nutritious, depending on what you look at it.
As Colin said, we had an open space committee meeting, and we met with the master plan review reexamination committee. Went really well. It went for a while. We had some pretty in-depth conversations. The committee is also making some changes to a letter that's going to go out to our landowners, asking them to participate in the preservation of their land. So we're making a few tweaks, and then we'll bring it before the township committee before it goes out. But that was not done for today, so probably next time.
Very good. I attended the Board of Ed meeting last week, and one of the things they did was they introduced a new vice principal slash supervisor of curriculum development, and that's a fellow named Dr. Todd St. Laurent. And they continue to have their issues and struggles with the Somerset Hills School District. Our representative from the Board of Ed that goes up to the school district was on two subcommittees. One was curriculum and the other was finance. And she was removed from the finance committee without her asking or her input, and they said because that they discussed tuition there. Well, that's exactly why our person needs to be on the finance committee, is because of the tuition issue. So that continues to be a struggle with the Board of Education in Somerset Hills. They will be getting a briefing next month from the Master Plan Subcommittee, and Superintendent Giordano accepted an invitation to come and brief them just so they know what's going on. And that's what I have. All right, Administrator's Report, Ms. Sullivan.
Yes, sir. The Workplace Charging Grant Program presented by Environmental Commissioner Tim Walter at a previous meeting. I met with him last week, and we finalized the application, and it's ready for your signature to go out, and it will be sent to them tomorrow. So if we're successful, we can then decide if we're going to move forward with the project and accept the funding if we get the funding. Happy to report, Mr. Mance and his crew are down paving the hike and bike trail. You want to tell us how we're doing?
It's a very slow process, but we're doing. We started some preliminary work a week ago. We did some paving a week ago. We are continuing to pave and prep and whatever. The one struggle we are going to have is that the bridges that were designed and built are not rated for anything that were more than maybe a golf cart. So we have to restructure one of the bridges so that we can get trucks with the material over them. So that's forthcoming this week, and hopefully, like I said, slow process, but we're working on it.
John, what's your anticipated completion date?
At this point, this week, we should have 70% done, and then we got Fall Fest next week, just gonna put a damper with the weather and stuff, so for the next 3 weeks or so.
That's great.
Yeah, pretty good.
So, speaking of Fall Fest, it is October 14th, 11 to 5. I know the firemen are trying to coordinate with, I think, the police department to stop traffic long enough to put up a banner across 202 Main Street, down in the vicinity of the Far Hills Pharmacy. So they hope to get that up in the next couple days. And just a reminder that Mountain Court Pharmaceuticals is going to have their kickoff grand opening ribbon cutting ceremony for their building over there on 206 on Monday the 16th from 8:30 to 10:30. You are all invited. If you haven't responded and would like to be there, let me know. I can respond for you, or you can, I think you were also copied. I think the mayor is scheduled to cut the ribbon, and they have quite a lot of people coming from the business community, from the freeholders. I think there's some, I think Leonard Lance is slated to come, representatives from Princeton University and Renton Valley College. So it should be a very nice event, 8:30 on the 16th. So that's all I have.
Very good. I understand we have a representative from Atlantic Health Systems with a very, a nice presentation.
Yes, I'd like to introduce, oh, you're going to have to tell me your name again.
Elaine Andrikovic.
Andrikovic, from Atlantic Health.
Yep, this is Phil Orphan. He's a coordinator with our Atlantic training. So Morristown Medical Center is the flagship of Atlantic Health System. We're also a cardiac center of excellence, and in short, we're trying to keep you out of the hospital, which sounds counterintuitive, but we're focusing on a lot of programs and education outside of the walls of the hospital. One of those initiatives is Project Heartbeat, which is where we're donating an AED to a number of towns in the area. We're doing some training, which Phil can speak more about.
Thank you for your time. We're happy to be able to offer this to your community. I understand it's going in this building, is that correct? So the Atlantic Training Center, our staff, more likely me, will be down to train as many employees and townspeople, ultimately, who are active in this building on the location of it and the complete operation of it, recognize cardiac events, recognizing cardiac arrest, acting quickly, defibrillating quickly, and getting an ambulance here and moving them on to the appropriate facility. So that is our plan. So I am at your beck and call for the most part. So once you have a number of staff, and we really don't have a limit to it, we'll make a schedule, come down nights, weekends, mornings, whatever works for your schedule for the staff and their needs here in the building. So we're waiting for you at this point. I know it's we're here now presenting it, but our schedule is pretty open. So whatever you decide to do, whether it's weeknights or weekday or weekend, we're ready to do it at your disposal.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, come to a discussion of introduced ordinances. Scheduled for public hearing, we don't have any. An introduction of ordinances, we don't have any. And a public hearing on ordinances, we don't have any. But we do have a consent agenda. That's coming next. We have 3 resolutions on the consent agenda. Does anybody have any comments or questions about anything on the consent agenda? If not, I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
I second it.
This is require a roll call vote. Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci? Aye. Mayor Parker?
Aye.
Thank you.
Resolutions. We have several resolutions tonight, starting with Resolution 2017-091, authorizing the award of a contract for trash collection, container rental, and hauling to Republic Services for a 2-year period. Any comments or questions?
If you remember, we had deferred this at the last meeting till, on Mr. Bellardo's advice, that we wait till we had a completed contract, which we now have. So that's ready for signature tonight with this resolution.
If there's no comments or questions, we'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote again. Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci? Aye. Mayor Parker?
Aye.
Thank you.
Resolution 2017-093, granting conditional permission to the Flint Hill Preserve. This is not the same as this is the river.
Yes, it is.
Well, let me defer that till the end of the resolution. So let's go to, Gesundheit, 2017-099, and that is the appointment of a part-time violations clerk in the shared municipal court. We had a retirement in the shared court, and now we're backfilling.
So last week, the court administrator and myself did interview a candidate to fill the position on a part-time basis. As a result of the retirement, we were left a little shorthanded. It came without too much planning on that we were able to do, so the funding was somewhat limited. It was basically the funding that Bernardsville and Bedminster would have contributed to this employee, we're going to retain and have that fund part-time employee just to the end of the year. So this will be a temporary position till the end of December, and then that's when our oversight committee will decide if maybe we're going to keep this person or we're going to interview other candidates and for a full-time position next year. So there's a second person on the resolution as well who is already an administrator, a court administrator in another town that has offered to help out if needed as a certified person. So they're both to be used as needed.
And this is a resolution. We do the resolution, then the other towns also have to follow suit.
No, they do not. This
Nope.
person
Because
becomes
it's a Bedminster
just
employee.
Yeah.
All right. Disregard. That's okay. I'm reading the PPAC Gladstone resolution that's on the back. All right. And we are already the two folks remaining are well qualified. So our court administrator and now our deputy court administrator, I think our deputy had been a court administrator in another town by shore years ago. So we are chuckle-blocked with experience. So
this would be bringing someone in at the violations clerk level, a startup to be trained.
any comments or questions? No, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote again. Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci? Aye. Mayor Parker?
Aye. Resolution 2017-100, authorizing submission of a grant application and execution of a grant contract with NJDOT for River Road West Phase 1 improvements. This is pavement?
So this is the 2018 submission for a grant for paving. This year's grant award was for Hillside Avenue, which will be next year's project. This year's project is Meadow Road, which we actually received in 2 years ago. So this will be actually a 2019 project. We hope we get approval in 2018 for River Road West.
Very good. Any comments or questions? If not, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I can just do an all in favor. I was going to do a roll call vote, but all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nope.
Thank you.
Resolution 2017-101, this is urging the state legislature to extend the 2% cap on police and fire arbitration contract awards. Normally, I'm not somebody that's interested in symbolic and resolutions, things that are just kind of for a political agenda. But the League of Municipalities has sent around this looking for support from various municipalities and entities to urge the legislature to extend the 2% cap on police and fire arbitration contract awards. It's hard to keep under the 2% spending cap if you can't keep your arbitration awards to 2%. And so they kind of go hand in hand. So if the new governor, whether he or her, whichever comes in there, we want to make sure that they are If they're going to do the 2% cap on spending, they ought to have the 2% cap on arbitration awards. Any comments or questions? I'll take a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Finally, getting back to Resolution 2017-093. This is conditional permission to the Flint Hill Preserve. This involves the Lamington River project. And we've been through this and through this and through this. In the last meeting, it got tabled with the idea that the Flint Hill folks were going to give us some more input into this resolution. Have we gotten any more input?
Mayor, the input we've gotten is some questions with respect to liability and indemnification language, along with some hourly call for some of our staff, including the township engineer. Those questions have been forwarded to Mr. Bellardo, and we'll follow up this week. But I don't think anything in those questions would prevent the resolution from being introduced tonight.
Do we have anyone here from Hill? I don't see anybody.
Clint, did you attend that, Urbani Design was showing up, and Mr. Lewis had invited all folks who were interested to go meet and ask questions of Urbani?
Correct, and Urbani did provide a presentation. I was there, Mr. Bell was there, along with a number of other residents. It was a good presentation. Mr. Urbani presented some details around the plans that he's laid out, as well as some examples of what he's done in the past in other applications. He also understood our concerns that are represented in the resolution itself.
Was he surprised by
None.
what I asked for?
None, not whatsoever.
Okay.
They also had mentioned NRCS input.
So I know Mr. Lewis has reached out to NRCS, who haven't yet responded back, but he does need to submit his application by October 21st for it to be considered for this cycle.
So I look at that as this is a philosophical question. We've been back and forth on this, I think, since the late spring. And one thing that the Flint Hill folks have said is they view us as kind of dragging our feet on this. And there's been a lot of discussion, some with substance and some with substance promised later, that some had come and some had not. I think the resolution we have has been vetted by our folks and our staff pretty well. I think this expresses Bedminster Township's view on things. I know we don't have anyone from Flint Hill here tonight, but I know they've got a deadline. Of the opinion that we put this up for a vote tonight, and then he at least has a way of completing his project. If he doesn't like it, if they don't like it, if they wish to renegotiate a piece, well, they can do that at a later date, but at least Bedminster Township is not in the way.
So with the language that's in this resolution, they cannot take the next step until they fulfill what's in the resolution, correct? So that's one of the ways that we're protecting Bedminster, correct?
Right.
Well, they can proceed with their application, and they
Correct.
can proceed with the grant process, and they
Correct.
can actually receive the grant process.
But physically,
Typically, they have to show us the plans, and we get to vet them, and
step for our purposes.
if we don't like what we see, then we can withdraw our approval. And you know, having gone through an earlier draft of this resolution, and Colin and I had coordinated with John Bellardo, this addresses the very concerns that we had raised with Mr. Lewis and Flint Hill about the project from the very beginning. Township's position has been consistent throughout the entire process. I think it is protective of the township, and all gives us the opportunity to make sure that the folks in Pottersville are also protected by this activity. So I was not inclined to change it, and I would have been to approve it at the last Township Committee meeting, and I'll make a motion to introduce it in this version.
Yeah, and it not only protects us, but it also puts Bedminster Township on record that we support this project, that we think that the river improvement is a good thing,
Right.
and that we are not interested in slowing down the process.
Right.
So,
We recognize, one of the whereas that Raritan Headwaters Association has indicated that the project provides environmental benefits for the water quality improvement of habitat for fish and other aquatic species, improving fishing opportunities for the public. So we put in there recognizing that We are not all experts in environmental quality, but, we do have a resident association in RHA that is. And, they support it, and as an environmental improvement, the way the resolution is drafted, if we approve it, then we support it as well.
Right. So I'm going to take that as we have a motion on the floor.
I've made the motion.
I'll second the motion. Roll call vote, Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci? Aye. Mayor Parker?
Aye.
Thank you.
And we'll pass that along to Flint Hill and wish them the best of luck. Approval of the list. Can I get a motion to approve the bill list pending the approval of individual invoices?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Again, roll call vote, Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci? Aye. Mayor Parker?
Aye.
Thank you.
Does anybody have a discussion item or business they wish to bring forth? Old business. We've got 130 Hillside Avenue. Judy, anything new on that?
Actually, that will be under executive session. We do have, we were contacted by an attorney representing one of the contiguous property owners. So we do have a contract negotiation under executive session.
All right. Lamington River Restoration Project, I think we've just addressed that. LoSAP for Pottersville.
I received a letter, it's in your packet, from Pottersville saying that they have reconsidered their amendment request and they'd like to withdraw their request.
Okay.
And it's their responsibility to abide by the ordinance as written, and they will do so.
Okay.
Judy, just curious, was there any explanation?
I would have a conversation with you after the meeting.
Okay.
And Dog Park. We already talked a little bit about Dog Park. Doug, do you have anything else?
Nothing to add from last meeting, unless, John, you got an update on what's going on?
This is about 3.5 weeks out. Tree company, I had Nelson take down a couple of trees, and I still need to have tree company come in and just trim up what was up there. So we're waiting for that work to be completed, and we've got some work to do ourselves, so hopefully next month.
And by the way, thank you for interacting with Nelson and getting some help there and moving along with the fence and the clearing.
Nelson did it on terms that were similar to what we had discussed.
I walked over and asked them for a favor.
They helped us out, and we thank them.
Thank you, John.
But like I
thank-
said, they're not tree surgeons, so a little bit more damage than I expected.
It'll grow back. All right, brings us to our second and final opportunity for any member of the public that wishes to be heard. Please bring yourself up to that microphone, state your name, your address for the audio portion of the recording.
Evening. My name is John Dapkins, police officer in Bedminster Township. I know many of you from different venues. Apologize for my appearance tonight. The reason why I'm here tonight is I was given a race notice, or however you want to refer to it, in regards to some action referring to myself. But essentially, I just want to explain a couple things to the committee. One, I wasn't at work, so the notice wasn't served to me. Second, I scrambled to try to figure out how to even address this, and then spent all weekend stressing over it because I didn't even know what the whole situation was about. So there is an issue with the service. The service was done when I was not at work, and the only reason I got the notice was I came to work for overtime over the weekend. I was able to contact either one of my attorneys, and wasn't able to get any of my attorneys to represent me at this meeting. I just wanted to state that for the record itself. The public request, because I don't know what's going on, and I made multiple requests to inquire as to what's going on, for complaints and different things, and I haven't received anything in over a year. So I'm here now to ask what's going on.
Well, we are about to have an executive session and then come out and have the open session which you requested. And you'll
comment in that session. I'm not familiar with the rules of this, and my attorneys were given ample opportunity to be present. With you, I feel like I'm being ambushed. How to serve somebody with a notice of this importance and not the common courtesy to call them or contact them directly. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, I'm just trying to be honest with you. I was arranged all day today. Received a phone call from Ms. Sullivan because I asked her to call me, because in the past when I've asked my lawyers to be CC'd multiple times, they never do, and it goes around in a circle. So I said, I'm not available and I need a phone call on this important topic. And once again, they have no representation here. I'm not a lawyer. I'm doing the best I can in a very stressful situation. And all I know is I came to work and there's a notice that says potential action. I've had a phantom IA hung over my head for over a year. I've been interviewed. I've tried to be interviewed. I tried to set meetings. I tried to have all these different things done, and nothing has been addressed on it. I'd also like to state on the record that conflicts of interest. All right, the town attorney, Mr. Thiebaugh, firm was with Mr. Berry at a seminar Friday the 29th, which Berry paid, received money. Have a seminar. People paid to go to Mr. Berry's seminar, who he hired to investigate me. Mr. Thiebaugh, the township attorney. Art Thiebaugh, who uses Mr. Berry in other formats, in other towns. I'm not accusing you, Mr. Mayor, of anything. I think you would like to know that before you hired the gentleman to investigate me. Some other conflicts as well. Somerset County Chief, past Somerset County Chief. Chuck was on the traffic committee with the person for many years. This person was in charge of the traffic committee for many years. And there's a list that goes on and on and on that was not disclosed when this person was hired. This attorney that this party used in 2007 for his own problems in South Bound Brook, New Jersey, same attorney that was used to represent and that I filed countless complaints against. Last but not least, no disrespect intended, but the town spent close to $25,000 on an HR investigation from the request that I got, at least from Ms. Sullivan. And I get the report, which I had to fight tooth and nail for. And with the HR report, I find out that over 130 plus complaints that I filed in an official capacity, about 2/3 weren't even investigated.
What was the total that you filed?
Over 130.
Okay.
And then at the scope that was set allowed the party to speak or look at certain things, or actually speak to actual eyewitnesses, or be provided physical evidence that was submitted in an official capacity. And I find out that in October of 2016, Art Thiebaugh gives instructions to Sergeant Cummins, the IA sergeant at the time, and orders him to cease all action and turn over his IA investigation to him, a civilian representing the town. I'm told I can't file any more complaints. I'm told not to do anything. This is documented. Thiebaugh then has a 2-day conversation, 2 different meetings with Sergeant Cummins. Not done for months. I'm told nothing. I send countless emails to Administrator Sullivan, and finally, at the end of the year, I'm told we hired an HR firm. I visit with the HR person for 9 hours. Speak to the person for 9 hours at my lawyer's office. Receive written instruction from the HR firm as to move forward and what to do. It's now September of 2017, and I find out that literally 130 plus complaints that were filed, approximately 1/3 were only looked at. And 1/3 that were looked at was not provided the evidence that I supplied because somebody invoked IA rules when converted from IA to HR. I told by the administrator to file IA complaints. I filed them in official capacity. I did everything I was told to do. And Art Thiebaugh converted them to an HR complaint from my understanding. And then hired the counsel through the documents that I opened, Ms. Newman. And then HR, Ms. Newman was all of a sudden not allowed to receive any evidence that I submitted because people invoked IA rules. So is it in HR or is it in IA, sir? And my question is, 130 complaints were filed, and nothing was looked at. I would like to know that when you come out, I'm going to be able to have a comment, because for over a year, I don't even know what this investigation's about. I actually looked and inquired about the actual statutes. They were the wrong statutes. And the personnel policy, one thing, and the SOP was another thing, and all these different things. I had communication with Chief Rock on the topic, and he was forwarding information. I don't think it was from him, but I don't know. And I kept getting the things, and I was sending stuff back. Sir, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Here's a picture of the table of contents. This charge does not exist. And communication ceased. And I have a correspondence from Administrator Sullivan, and Art Thibault can write whatever he wants in a letter. Because I have a letter, and I'm not picking on Madam Sullivan, but it says the IA was suspended, the IA was reinstated. The internal investigation was suspended and reinstated. Okay, you should look at the 100-plus page Attorney General guidelines where you can't do that. It's in blue ink by the administrator of this township. And then I file all my complaints with Newman, as I was instructed to in writing, with Sergeant Cummings. And I get a directive from the administrator telling me, forbidding me, I'm not to have any more communication with the person you hired. Right? HR, firm you hired to following the truth, can't talk to anymore. Can't send her anything, can't send any more complaints, zero correspondence. And now I'm supposed to send my HR complaints to Ms. Sullivan, who when I went to in the beginning, she told me that we don't have an HR department for this town. And now I file that going forward, and I file numerous complaints with her. And then file complaints with Sergeant Bernardo because of ongoing things that are going on. It was on and on and on. Conservatively, we're at about 200 complaints. Something's wrong. Disrespect. I'm not trying to be obnoxious or anything else, but the message is not coming across to this panel. Something going on. I'm not going away. Lily, I got a lot of stuff going on. Let's go ahead and let's talk about some other stuff. You know, hey, all of a sudden a guy that the town's trying to fire is back in September, and they have an IA opened up on me at the same time. So the timeline, I have an IA opened up on me by an officer in August. The chief goes to the Somerset County Prosecutor's Office, asks them to investigate it. They punt and say absolutely not. I know that because I opened the documents. They came back to the town. The chief recommended to hire Mr. Very. Nobody meant any conflict of interest at all. And I noticed literally in September of 2012, and guess who comes back to work? Promoted with a magic wand to settle a lawsuit. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, and I'm going to say names because I know you have confidentiality agreements with that, and I'm going to respect that. But anybody see a problem with that? We're involved or not? That's the timeline. That's exactly what happened. And then I find out that Mr. Very, before I even served with this notice to this IA, it actually opened up in August, and I served till September when people scramble because they realized that on September 12th, this officer that was suspended is coming back and is going to be promoted as sergeant. I get served right before that happens, so everybody can say there's no correlation to it. And then we go forward even further. And I find out that before any of that occurs, any of my service, Mr. Barry's interviewing people. I'm not even notified of this investigation. And I don't hear anything from Mr. Very at all. Months go by. Over 9 months go by. Nothing. Can't get a response. Can't get a return phone call. Can't get an email. Miraculously, I file a complaint against some other retaliation things that are going on to me. Guess what I get? I get an email in the middle of the night from Bob Berry, demanding this, demanding that, demanding that. I'll try with you. You know what my response was? Where you been for 9 months? Anybody see a problem with asking that question? Been for 9 months. No thoughts. And we go round and around and around and around. I get a lawyer for PBA, legal protection plan. We go round and round and round. And then I say, hey, where you want to meet? We're going to interview? Whatever you want. I'm here. I ran from anything in my life. 20 years of law enforcement. I know you saw the HR report. I got one entry. Okay, from one person that claimed they went AWOL on Easter when my relief was here. And I wasn't even scheduled to work. I was DB then. And I covered 2 people on the road so they could go with their family that day. My relief was in. And then the person that was filing a lawsuit and all this other crazy stuff, I know you know what I'm talking about, all of a sudden made a complaint that I was AWOL, even though my relief was here. That's the only thing I have in my file, which I know you saw in the HR report, 20 years of law enforcement. That's the only thing I have. Only thing. And the same person at the time, which I just found out recently, had filed a complaint of favoritism. Myself. Apparently, and the chief, Meyer, who's deceased, kind of coincidental. You know, we got lawsuits going on. We got, SEPA claims. We got all this good stuff by this person. We got, GPS units on this guy's car and all this good stuff going on, right? And then, bam, 20 years. Picked up over 1,000 people. Won every award. You yourself gave me awards. You yourself wrote letters of commendations to me. You yourself said they would have never caught those burglars if it wasn't for you. I was listening to the scanner. 20 years. And I got an AWOL hit because somebody has out for me. And you know what the story about that. I asked prior to that, hey, sir, I want to meet with you. Ham, I want to meet with you. When chief went to this one, that one. I've got old emails. Nobody would meet with me. And then when I spoke to the madam says to me, hey, that other guy didn't tell the truth, blah, blah, blah. No problem. We thought that's what it was about. So my contention is on all this. We come out of that executive session because I thought it was going to be an open format and we were going to discuss stuff. I was going to find out what I was being accused of after a year plus. I guess that doesn't work that way. I don't know why I requested an open meeting. I have a right to say something. I don't know because my lawyers couldn't come because I got a notice, and the only reason I found out about a notice is because I came to work overtime. Anybody think that's acceptable? I don't. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. How's that work? I go to somebody with paperwork, you got to serve them. You can't just throw it in their mailbox and say you're served. Mention the stress that it put my family through this weekend. Purposely didn't tell my wife because I didn't know. Am I the next guy that's not going to have a job? Am I the next guy that's going to be all of a sudden, fighting for a job or what's going on? All weekend I didn't say anything. And then finally I had to break down and tell my wife. Now she's hysterical. And I got 2 little children at home. My blood pressure's through the roof. I got a pounding headache. I got a notice literally in my mailbox with 0 explanation. Have you seen the notice? Anybody seen it? Have you? Patrol discipline action. What does that mean, sir? And what does IA that's been going on for a year with Mr. Very? And I'd like to also, for the record, say it is the first time since the inception of this police department that anybody has been investigated by anybody of an IA inside realm. It happened. There's been an outside investigator IA ever, except for Truly. I would consider that a double standard. You had hearing officer Hidaka for the other party and all this different stuff. We're talking investigation, an IA investigation. And I would also like to ask, why are my 130 complaints magically waved into an HR trash bin that aren't investigated? Whereas I have an IA complaint from a civilian that nobody wants to address and won't go away. When my lawyer sends a letter basically saying we demand it to be dismissed, I get a response back from Art that basically says, Mr. Thiebaugh, it won't be dismissed, this, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, in the middle of the night, essentially, I get a notice that, basically a rice notice that basically says you're going to discuss discipline against me. And the only reason I found it is basically I happened to come to work for overtime, because realistically, I wouldn't have found it, and my next day back is Tuesday. So realistically, you would have been in violation if I didn't come to work. So I'll stop now, but I'm asking why have a chance to comment when you come out, because I don't know, and I couldn't get my lawyers to come here because literally I'm scrambling to find out what to do on a notice that I got Friday on a Monday, and both my lawyers are in trial in 2 different courts. Able to comment?
I will tell you one. I can give you an answer on 130 different complaints.
Answer.
I've seen some of them. I've responded to a couple of them, so you can't say nobody's responded, because I know I've responded to the 2 that went above Ms. Sullivan's head and went to the Township Committee. So you got answers on those, and you got them fairly quickly. So you can't say nothing came back. The purpose of this evening is for the Township Committee to look at the report and determine if we're going to accept the report or not accept the report. Whether we decide to accept the report or not accept the report allows us to go on to a next step.
What report are we talking about, sir?
The report that you were talking about from Mr. Berry.
All right, so Mr. Vary's completed this investigation.
We have a report.
Okay, again, nobody's...
Now, and we're going to go into executive session, we're going to come back out, and you will also get a chance to speak then.
All right, fair enough. I'll be waiting. Thank you, sir.
All right. Any other members of the public wish to comment? If not, we can go to Township Committee comments. Stevenson?
No comment.
Mr. Hickey?
No comments, Mayor.
Mr. Jacobs?
No comments, Mayor.
Ms. Santee? I will make it a perfect 5. This body will go into executive session. We have 2 items to discuss. One is contract negotiation on Hillside Avenue, and the other is a preliminary discussion on the rules for the police matter, and then we will come back to open session for that police matter. And can I get a motion for executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We'll be back out after. Microphone's coming back on. It is 8:56, and we're coming out of executive session. And the matter is a personnel matter. Officer Dapkins, who is asked to make this a public session. John, I'd like you to just guide us through what the procedure is for this portion of the meeting.
Sure. So this is a personnel matter that normally would be discussed in executive session, but as the mayor said, the employee involved has requested, as this is right, that any discussion on this matter take place in a public hearing, an open hearing. So that's what this is. This is not a public session with public comments. This is the discussion that would occur during a closed session amongst the members of the council that is just happening in view of the public. That's all this is. Mayor and council, this is your opportunity to discuss personnel matter before you tonight.
What is fomented up on this is a confidential report that was done by Chief Very at the behest of Bedminster Township, and the subject matter was Officer Dapkins, and there were several claims put into this report. I will just read you the basic titles of the claims. One is causing a hostile work environment, stalking, conduct unbecoming of an officer, official misconduct, and insubordination.
So now, Mayor and members of the council, this is your opportunity to discuss or to opine on whether your opinions on the report, whether you preliminarily agree with the findings, and whether or not you agree with the proposed conclusions and how to move forward.
Well, Mayor, I think I'll start by just saying that, none of us were in the room during any of these reports, so, taking the report, I mean, obviously we've received it, I've read it. I have no basis to think there's anything false in the report. Troubled, quite frankly, by the fact that we really don't have a complete report. It's because the target, if you will, Officer Dapkins, never statement. Never, I mean, he was given opportunity, but he never answered anything. He was given written requests. He was asked to come in with his attorneys. To that extent, we've got some gaps, but the gaps are created because of a failure to engage. That I have a problem with, more so than the underlying allegations. I don't know whether there's enough in this report to substantiate the claims of harassment or anything like that, but clearly we have a failure by Officer Dapkins to engage in this process. The order came down that a request from the investigator was the equivalent of a request from the chief, and nothing was done. It was as if it was a farce, and that's a problem. So from that perspective, I have a problem with what happened here.
Looking at the report is, it was interesting to see the investigation of the initial, let's see, I just want to get the words right here. The initial claims and now the subsequent interviews led the Chief Ferry to essentially corroborate and substantiate the claims that were originally asserted. And then there's the issue that, Doug, you just raised, that very identifies that the failure to participate in the process, frankly, may have worsened the position of Officer Dapkins as the way this report was drafted. So that's, just walking through complaint, through the investigation process, saving Officer Dapkins for the end, and then never really being there. So
May I comment or no?
This time, there's nothing to be
This
commented
is
on.
our,
This is their internal deliberations.
this is what we would be deliberating if we were in exec session. You want this public, so we're walking through this.
I want to provide information to
We
them.
will let you speak at the end,
Okay.
but we let you speak.
I mean, look, we sit around and we crunch the budget numbers every year, and we try to make our nickels and dimes go as far as they possibly can. We paid money for this, okay? And from what I'm reading in this report, we didn't get our money's worth because we couldn't hear from one of the key parties. And I think, the conclusion here is that it was intentional. So on the one hand, I've got an officer who, by his own statement here tonight, said he filed 200, 300. It's no problem putting something down in writing when he's got a problem. Why did we not hear from him on this report? That's volumes to me.
We put a great trust in our police department. Every local municipality, the police department is sacred. We expect you to protect us. We put great charge and great trust in our police department. In this part of New Jersey, I spend a lot of time reading the local papers and reading about departments to the east of us that have grave problems, bigger problems than we have here tonight. But it creates a lot of confidence and a distrust in the folks in uniform, and that's wrong, and that's sad. Anybody that's worn a uniform, not a police uniform, but a uniform, having the respect of the public is vital, And that patch on the shoulder that says Police of Bedminster Township needs to say something. As I read this report, there's a lot of stuff in here that troubles me. Some of it big, some of it little, but it erodes that trust. And that's what bothers me. None of this stuff is or should be taken lightly. We expect the folks in uniform to act professionally at all times, not just with the public, but also with each other. Because as Mr. Stevenson was saying, we pay you. And we pay you and we expect something for that. And that's not just, I made a bunch of arrests, not just I caught some speeders, not just that I was out there doing my job, but also to engender the respect that the office deserves. And for that reason, I for one look at this and do not take this lightly.
Any other members have comments on substance of the report?
Substantively, I think it does fall short of the underlying claim of harassment. Okay, I don't think there's enough in here to corroborate. Yeah, there's little bits and pieces here or there. My fundamental problem is that we almost do a turn here, right? It's a hard turn that we couldn't get a complete report. We had a failure to engage. And what the mayor's comment from an officer in the police department, where police reports are sacrosanct, they go before courts all the time, they're used to refresh recollection for evidentiary purposes. You can't have a situation where we're having hundreds of complaints coming in on the one hand and then in a complete failure to engage when the shoe's on the other foot. To me is the problem.
Failure to cooperate.
Yes.
So you made the point, now I'm not sure that I would go so far as to say that the underlying harassment claim, there's not enough there. I mean, I think the investigator ran through and found that there was significant corroborating instances, and some of his interviews led him to that conclusion that there were some of those underlying claims reported and substantiated based upon those interviews. I don't want to say that was small potatoes.
No.
Coming to the end, because I don't want to be dismissive of the harassment trigger which started this, but then coming to the end, some of the assertions by the investigator about the back and forth with Officer Dapkins and perhaps even with counsel really interfered with the investigation process itself. And to jeopardize this process, which is, as Doug and the mayor said, you know, these are pretty important processes that can help you as this independent review is going on. That's a problem. And that really is sort of ringing more soundly and loudly than perhaps the underlying harassment claim.
Let me clarify. And I say harassment, I'm talking about your legal definition of what a harassment is and what someone might think of it. I'm not saying that the conduct that was cited in here was acceptable. I don't know whether it rises, maybe it does, it doesn't. I'm just saying, as I read this, to me this is about something else. I mean, yes, that's there, and it's certainly about poor conduct. Where it equates to harassment, I don't know. All I'm simply saying is that there's stuff in there that I didn't like, but the real core thing for me is an absolute failure to engage.
Like I said, I will say that the stuff I read about the harassment in here, some of the stuff I read from Officer Dapkins doesn't paint a pretty picture of our police department in general. And that's what troubles me also. Having said that, I will offer anybody else a chance to comment, but I would also like John in the end to read through the conclusion. And before we talk about determine whether we're going to accept the report, not accept the report, and what comes next, I'd like to offer Officer Dapkins, which we don't have to do, an opportunity to speak. It won't be a question and answer, but you can speak your piece.
Thank you, sir.
So, John, if there's anyone else that wishes to comment.
Okay, on the report, Chief Very recommended that Officer Dapkins be served with a notice and charging form with the penalty of termination from his law enforcement position with the township. He recommends at a minimum that the officer be charged with the following. Number 1, violation of NJSA 40A:14-147, misconduct. Number 2, case law in re Tuke, 59 NJ Super 219, Appellate Division 1978. Number 3, violation of policy 2A-19, harassment prohibited. Number 4, violation of rule 3.1.3, abide by all rules, regulations, and departmental procedures and directives governing police officer employees. Number 5, violation of rule 3.1.6, conduct themselves in accordance with high ethical standards on and off duty. Number 6, rule 4.1.3, obedience to law and rules. Employees shall obey all laws, ordinances, rules, policies, and procedures and directives of the department. Number 7, Rule 4.1.6, insubordination. Employees shall not A, fail or refuse a lawful order given by a supervisor, or B, use any disrespectful or abusive language or action toward a supervisor. 8 is Rule 4.1.7, conduct toward other departmental employees. Employees shall treat other department employees with respect. They shall be courteous and civil at all times in their relationships with one another. When on duty and in the presence of the public, officers should be referred to by rank. And finally, number 9, Rule 4.6.3, prohibited activity on duty. Employees who are on duty are prohibited from engaging in activities which are not directly related to the performance of their duty, e.g. sleeping, conducting private business, gambling, etc. Lastly, it appears there's an allegation that goes beyond the scope of the investigation that warrants further examination if it already hasn't been, which is 1, that Officer Dapkins falsified an officer's individual firearms qualifications records. Those are the conclusions for your consideration based on this report.
Now, Dapkins, before I let you speak, I just want to remind you again, you're going to statement, there's not going to be a question and answer back and forth.
Understood.
I just want to confirm that, is this being recorded?
Yes.
So just so you know, you don't have your attorney here tonight. This is not a hearing. But it is being recorded as a Township Committee meeting would be. So you have the freedom to speak, but just so you know, it's all entailed.
Understood, sir.
And the floor is yours.
Thank you. First, I would like to, just address a couple of concerns by Committeeman Stevenson, because, having one version, I didn't see the report, I don't even know what the complaint is. So it's difficult when you don't know who the, I don't know anything about the allegations, was never interviewed. But I'll address your comments. The fact that I refused to be interviewed is not true. There are, I'll say hundreds, but many correspondence of email, letters, phone messages, et cetera, from myself and Mr. Woodruff, one attorney, as well as Mr. Frank Arleo, the legal protection plan attorney, that purposely had tried to coordinate numerous conversations with Mr. Berry. And, I don't want to speak for him, but, Frank Arleo from Arleo and Donahue, the law firm, is my lawyer for this matter, and he can provide all those documents, some of which were certified letters that went actually unanswered from Mr. Berry. So I don't want to call you a name or anything incorrectly. I just don't think that you have all the facts, sir. Not to be disrespectful to anybody here, but that's not correct. And I'm not asking for a response because I know what the rules are that the mayor gave me, and I'm respecting those. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity, sir. But that didn't happen. That's not occurred. There are emails, there are documents, there are all these different things that occurred. Furthermore, there are multiple times and multiple correspondence where I specifically said I will be interviewed anytime you want, anywhere, anytime, et cetera, et cetera. In fact, originally we had dates set up. I don't know who came up with the decision, but then all of a sudden at the last minute I wasn't allowed to be interviewed on those dates because it was outside of when I was working, and and I work nights, and my lawyer's not available at nights, and then Mr. Very had all these strange hours. So there are emails upon correspondence about interviewing me. I'm putting words in anybody's mouth, but then I basically said, just so we're clear, I'm going to invoke the rights that I know that I have when being a target of an IA, because this is an IA, internal investigation from my understanding, okay? And I'm going to record the interview. That's when all of a sudden there was no more conversation about being interviewed. I have a right to record it. He does have a right, everybody else does have a right, so I said I'm going to invoke my rights and record being interviewed. My lawyer then went on and asked numerous times as to further clarification, not just statutes, but actual clarification, like Attorney Visconti read. We didn't even get that. We just said, you got your stuff. Never told who the complainant is, who she is. I know who it is, right? And I want to go on the record to say that that complaint came in after I filed a very in-depth complaint in person to the administrator. I get a retaliation, and so do my attorneys. And you people have all the facts. But the facts are coming. And the threat is just the facts are coming. All right? And one of them is that I never, ever refused to be interviewed. In fact, at one point, I used the term almost chased the party to be interviewed. I had the emails. So did my lawyer. So we're having the correspondence. In fact, the letter that was sent to the mayor and to the administrator, as well as Mr. Thiel, because he was the point of contact, at least because there was different people involved, state there are no, I don't want to quote, but there has been no correspondence from Mr. Very on numerous attempts, et cetera, et cetera. There's a certified letter to you. I'm not asking you to answer, but there was one sent to the mayor, one sent to you, one sent to our Thiel, specifically saying that I've attempted to schedule this, I've attempted to have my client interviewed, I've attempted numerous correspondence, and you have not responded. And the response we got back from Mr. Thiel was, you will not contact these people anymore, you will go through me directly. The 45-day rule does not apply, and a bunch of different stuff that was in that context of the letter. I have a copy of that letter as well. So, Mr. Stevenson, you know, my email is jdapkins@bedminster.us. Email. I'll go next door right now. I'll hit send. I won't even speak to a lawyer. I'll send you everything. You don't know. jdapkins@bedminster.us. Did not happen. I will look you in the face and tell you that did not happen. I will look you in the face and tell you that did not happen. I will look you in the face and tell you that did not happen. And I can prove it. I'm trying to be disrespectful to anybody here. And the complainant, all right, the complainant itself, who it is, filed the complaint after I had a very lengthy conversation in depth. And just so you know, my complaints against that party were investigated by your HR report for $25,000 because she was not allowed to investigate it. So Frank Arleo, Donahue, is a law firm. I was speaking to that person because he wasn't amused by it either. I speak to Larry Bitterman as well. He wasn't amused by your investigator either in other cases that he dealt with. They won't refer to some civil cases out of South Jersey and Galloway. Some things occurred like this. There's a long other list. Again, not trying to be disrespectful, sir, but I did not refuse to be interviewed. I attempted to be interviewed. All I did was say, I know who it is. You won't tell me who it is. I have a civil suit involving the township. I have 130 plus complaints, an HR complaint, this complaint, that complaint, all these different things. I deem it retaliation. Nobody wants to tell me anything about it. And then literally, just so you know, that complaint's filed in August of 2016, sir. 2016 of August, that complaint's filed. I'm notified on September 8th, all right, by Chief Rock last minute. And then on September 12th, somebody gets brought back to work and promoted with a magic wand, okay? And then I don't hear anything from anybody all the way up until all of a sudden the spring of 2017 from Mr. Barry? Nothing. No correspondence. Nothing. I get served with a notice by the chief. Right that. Find out that he's interviewing people. Right that. What's going on? Nothing. All of a sudden, I make some additional complaints that I believe are valid. So it's not all one-sided, sir, just so you understand. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to you. I'm just animated because, I just was told that he's recommended termination and I was never interviewed. And I hid from it. And I would also like to point you to some cases in South River that you may want to look into where, he recommended termination and it didn't work out well either. It worked out well for the final appeal, didn't work out well civilly. If you would like the information, I'll send it to you. Ms. Santucci, Mr. Jacobs, no personal hardships towards yourself. You seem like you were upset about it or whatever. The mayor himself seemed like upset. I got nothing to hide. I'll go lock my computer right now. You can go through everything right now. I'll walk out of the room. I have nothing to hide. I did not lie. We were interviewed, and if I was interviewed, I'd be able to defend myself. And again, with respect, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity because I know you don't have to, but I think you also realize that I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I feel like I got sandbagged. I'm going to put it in layman terms. I come into work just to work overtime, and there's basically a rice notice that says, hey, by the way, we're going to discuss this Monday. I got that Friday night. What's to do with that? So before I leave, and I know I don't know if you have any questions, but if you have a question as far as, my lawyer, whatever, let me know. You have my email. I have no problems with supplying that stuff. Robert Woodruff is my one attorney out of Scotch Plains, New Jersey, Bob Woodruff. All right. You're welcome to contact him. Free to do so. He's one of the super lawyers rated out of Schiller and Pittenger. That's his specialty. And then obviously Mr. Frank Arleo, who's on the legal protection plan, Arleo and Donahue, out of, I believe, Livingston. But obviously you can find all these parties or I can supply their information. But there aren't a ton of correspondence. If there's any questions, I have no problems answering anything you want to ask me right now. I'll answer it with the video going and the YouTube video and, all the other stuff, whatever. I've got nothing to hide. If you want to ask me a question, I thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but that is not what went on. That is not even close to what went on. And literally, just so you also know, so you're aware, one of the reasons why it got postponed is because Chief Very had to go away Chiefs Convention for a week. And he couldn't meet with me in writing. And all the dates that we picked that he gave me, that I agreed to, just schedule, I'll meet you, name it, when you want to meet, all these different dates, all of a sudden got pulled out from under me. Because somebody said, we're not paying him to get interviewed. He's doing it his own time. And then, all right, well, I'm not sure I'm supposed to do that. And actually, Mr. Very accused me of something, which is, I don't want to be disrespectful, so I'm going to shut my mouth, in writing, which didn't occur. And then finally, my lawyer said, you know what, I'm going to handle everything, all communication. So there's actually a written document that says going forward, all communication will go through these lawyers.
Officer Dawkins, you'll have an opportunity wherever it goes. I mean, this is not the beginning and end of this. Okay?
I agree with you, sir. Yes, sir. My problem is this, is that I think about this. I'm going to use the term sandbag. It's been going on since August of 2016. A rice notice in my mailbox that I never saw. I would have never even been here if I didn't come to work for overtime. I've never even served to this, never had the opportunity to speak to counsel, speak to the PBA, speak to anybody. Didn't even know it was Mr. Very, and literally until you had said it prior to going into the executive session, this report or whatever. And at the end of all this, I hear the magic words out of a lot of his reports. I recommend termination. Just a couple other things. There's some other conflicts of interest. Like you said, down the road through discovery purposes, but there are some great, conflicts of interest as well. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Maybe they're not aware of them. Maybe they weren't disclosed to you. But these matters do exist as well. So I got no problems. Anybody else have a question for me? Ask me.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. I have one other question. If you can answer it, it has nothing to do with the specific report. It had to do with the process. Again, no disrespect, but I couldn't get a hold of my attorneys last minute. I'm not a lawyer in this matter, so what exactly occurs? I mean, am I terminated? I mean, what occurs?
Well, for one thing, we haven't rendered a decision here even about this report. That's what will be coming next.
Right, so I'll just give you the very quick version, and then I'll defer to Mr. Tebold, because he's Labor Counsel, and he'll be more vested. This council will determine whether or not they agree preliminarily with the findings in the report, and if they agree to bring charges consistent with what's recommended in the report. If they do, there'll be a full due process hearing, and I'll defer to Mr. Tebold, if this board votes that way, to then describe what would come next.
And is that vote tonight?
Yes.
Yes.
So I can wait and find out tonight?
You can sit down and watch as it unfolds.
All right, thank you.
Art, do you have any other comments to make about the process?
No, that's, no, John, correct, Mayor. If the committee votes to authorize charges, then the charge will be served on Officer Dapkins. Officer Dapkins will be provided with an opportunity for hearing to contest those charges, and the full panoply of due process rights would then be triggered at that point in time.
So the next step is, I will ask my fellow members of the committee who've all read this report. I would like to get a indication, yes or no, if you accept the findings of this report. Or, I'm sorry, accept the report as written. Am I saying that correctly? Is that the question?
Yeah, the question is whether the committee members accept the findings in the report as question one, and then if that's a yes, then the question two would be whether they agree with the recommendation and resolve to authorize charges to be filed.
All right. I'll be the first one to move, and I will say yes.
Well, Mayor, I mean, I don't take any of this lightly. This is serious business. I've heard what Officer Dapkins had to say, and the only thing I would point to is just as we get this here in our limited role in looking at this, putting aside the back and forth about the scheduling, there is an opportunity to answer written questions, and a lot of time was given for that according to the report, and even that didn't get done, so I vote yes.
Mayor, I'd like to echo Mr. Stevens' comments, and I also vote yes.
Mr. Jacobs?
Mayor, so going through the report and, as I said earlier, to some extent it is incomplete because we don't have Officer Dapkins' responses in here, whether it was the written questions or whether it was the sit-down with Very. So Officer Dapkins coming here and raising issues that aren't in here, but that's not, that may be down the line for whatever, if we do take disciplinary action, that's for a hearing down the line. But if we're looking at the substance of the report and what Chief Very indicated in his process from the investigation and his conclusions, his findings of fact, whether they are supported by the document itself, the answer is yes.
Ms. Santucci?
Based solely, as Larry said, upon the report, I accept the findings of the report.
All right. So we have the answer to question one. The question is, do we accept the findings of this report?
So question two for the committee is what committee agrees with the recommendations as read by Township Attorney Visconti and resolves to move forward to authorize charges against Officer Dapkins and the penalty recommended by Chief Very.
Now, a point of order on this. There's a recommendation, and then there's a list of 9 rules.
Correct.
Is that something that, do you accept them 9-0, or is there a chance to pick and choose?
No, the committee, after review of the report, can conclude that certain charges do not fit, and therefore, wouldn't be charged.
All right, so I say rather than simply go up and down and ask 5 of you for a yes or no, I would like to get a little deliberation. Is there anyone that wishes to take something other than a yes on all 9? Or no,
What's number 2?
in Ray Touch, or, yes, could you explain that one?
Yeah, number 2 is a case that dealt with that a police officer being in the public service has an implicit standard of good conduct, and certain actions would violate that implicit standard of good conduct that delves upon a member in the public service. It reiterates essentially the 48-14-147 charge of conduct unbecoming or misconduct. That's what that case talked about.
Now, one of the, I guess this is more of a finding from Barry, this is on top of page 30. Because Officer Dapkins never answered any of the questions, all the evidence and or information gathered throughout the investigation shall be weighed in the complainant's favor, including but not limited to the allegations raised by the complainant. And then Barry runs through 3 incidents. Do those incidents line up with the 9 violations that Barry is suggesting at the end?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you just as...
Yeah, so the three incidents that are listed there would line up with some of those, yes.
For example, number 7, insubordination, fail or refuse a lawful order given by a supervisor.
And number 1, number 2.
Number 1, number 3, number 4,
number 5.
number 6.
And so it was stated earlier that the investigator essentially is acting as an agent of the chief? Is that...
The investigator is acting as the agent of the appropriate authority, which is the entire Township Committee above chief. But a civic direction was given that any order or direction by the investigator would be deemed as if it was an order from the chief of police.
Okay.
Did that come out?
Well, any other discussion on the
I
various charges?
don't know whether what we have in these 30-some odd pages rises again to harassment. Okay, I clearly think we have allegations and conclusions that are insubordination, conduct unbecoming, that sort of thing. And maybe I'm in the minority here. I just don't see that there was definitive corroboration on harassment. That would be the one that I would have a problem with.
Any dissenting or supporting comments to that?
I tend to agree based on what I read.
Okay. Anyone else?
I will disagree. I mean, taking the report and the findings of the report, which I guess we've already accepted, it would support, in my view, Doug and Stacy obviously a different position, that it would get to harassment and support that claim.
Unless there are other comments on any of the other 9, that we could handle this with 2 votes, one on numbers 1, 2, and then 4 through 9 at the same time, and then a second vote on number 3, harassment.
We can do that. All right, so I will put out for a motion 1, 2, 4 through 9.
And this is to approve of implement charges pursuant to those recommendations.
Yes.
Okay.
What are the numbers again, sir?
1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And I know that's be tough for you to keep track of because you don't have the piece of paper in front of you that we do, but essentially all the charges absent the charge of harassment.
I was able to follow, sir, I understand.
So
Number 3 would be...
3 would be harassment,
allegation.
so
Correct.
that's probably the easiest way to keep track of it.
No, I understand. Right, everything except for harassment.
Yep. I'll start off, yes.
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 Okay, and then with respect to number 3, harassment.
Is, I will again start.
No.
Yep.
Yes.
No.
So, there you have it.
So we have a yes on 1, 2, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I
Mhm.
believe I heard 3 to 2, no for number 3, so we'll not.
So number 3 will be stricken.
Okay.
Now, I will just conclude this by saying, this is not an end, this is a beginning. This is a beginning of a due process, and you and your attorney, or whoever will be representing you in the hearing, will have the same opportunities afforded anyone at one of these hearings. In fact, I don't want to be the one to discuss it. Art, if you can outline what comes next, I think that's probably more appropriate than me muddling through it.
Thank you, Mayor. Just point of order, the recommendation or the resolution to file charges on 1, 2, 4 through 9 also conform to the recommendation on penalty, because that piece wasn't clear to me. So I want to make sure, I want to understand what the committee's doing, and then we can talk about procedure from here on out.
My opinion is yes. Do we have a dissent on that?
No.
So why don't we do, sorry, just because I'm...
Make it clear.
I was
Make
a
it
little
crystal
unclear
clear.
when I asked...
We owe the officer
So
that.
when you approved numbers 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, is it your understanding that, and we'll do the same vote 1 through 5, that in bringing those charges, the result would be termination? So now let's do yeses and nos to be sure we're clear on that.
Yes.
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 Okay.
Will you provide the rest of the process?
Labor Council?
Yes, so the committee, as the appropriate authority, the police department has authorized charges to be filed against Officer Dapkins. Those charges will be drafted and filed and served on Officer Dapkins. Officer Dapkins will be provided, as I said before, with an opportunity to request a hearing and then have a full hearing on the charges here at Bedminster Township. He'll have the opportunity to present witnesses, to cross-examine witnesses, to present documents in his favor, and raise any issue that he deems relevant, and to contest the charges. A person appointed by the committee will make a decision based on the charges and the evidence brought forth, and then make a recommendation back to you as to whether or not they believe, based on the evidence, the charges were sustained, and then this committee will then vote to either accept or reject that decision. And from there, depending on what happens, then there's Mr. Officer Dapkins will have appeal rights through the process established.
What's the timing on that?
Timing on charges? Hearing?
The whole process on the hearing.
Yeah, so the statute sets forth that a hearing, when charges are filed, a hearing has to occur no sooner than 10 days, no later than 30 days. That time period can be waived by the officer. And then, the parties mutually agree upon a date. So it could take,
Waived usually for longer,
right,
for the reason of going longer.
correct. Because when the charges are served, there's a date that's placed in within that 20-day window. Officer Dapkins' attorneys may not be available on whatever date is elected, so they may need time to review discovery, prepare their case. They just may not be available because of a conflict. And then at that point in time, the hearing would be rescheduled at the convenience of the parties, and, move forward. So the time period could be, a couple of months to decision, to a little bit more than a couple of months to decision.
And at that hearing, that's not necessarily a recitation of the issues in here, but Officer Dapkins is then afforded the full opportunity to defend the assertions that were, or in whatever document goes out.
Correct, right. He'll have the opportunity not only to present witnesses in his defense, but to cross-examine witnesses, to present documents, things of that nature.
So to the extent that Officer Dapkins has those emails or has evidence that's contrary to what's presented in the report, that's the full opportunity for Officer Dapkins to present that information right there.
That is correct.
Okay.
Requested in the public, please.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
No, I'd like to request my hearing in the public.
Okay. He'll have the opportunity to do that when the charges are served, but
Okay.
so noted, that's fine. One of the rights afforded under the Attorney General guidelines is an officer can request to have his disciplinary hearing held in public, meaning that the public can attend this hearing and watch.
Correct.
Where would that typically be? Would that be
I'm
here,
sorry?
or would it be?
Yeah, here in the township.
Okay.
All right.
So appreciate that. I'll notify the state PBA president of that as well.
All right. And with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.